Hey everyone, it's Jayme and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm very excited to be bringing you the speed build for the Gloom house, the house that I'm using in my Let's Play Gloom, inspired by the card game of the same name, in which I let the card game decide what I do to my Sims. If you haven't checked that out, I have a few episodes out right now, and I've been having a lot of fun with it. I think it's a super fun concept. I also love the game Gloom, and I love the Sims, so it's like bringing just two things I love together. If you've never played Gloom or familiar with it just a little, or if you do love it, part of the reason I love it and wanted to bring it into The Sims is I love that there's a storytelling aspect to the game Gloom. The more creative you are, I think the more fun you have with it, because how it goes is you pick up a card, and the card will say something like, was stung by 100 bees, and you have to decide which family member within your card family got stung by 100 bees, and you have to come up with a story of why it happened. And so it's just like a lot of really fun, creative storytelling, in my opinion, and I thought it would translate well to The Sims, and so far I'm having a super fun time with it. So I went ahead and I decided I was going to build them a house before I started the Let's Play. And what I wanted to do was just make another Victorian. I know I make a lot of Victorians. Most of my channel speed builds, I think, are Victorian builds. I'm willing to own up to that. However, for this build specifically, I think it really matched what was happening in the gameplay, if that makes sense, and that's because Charles Addams, the creator of the Addams family, he's the part of the reason why Victorian homes kind of have this connotation of being creepy, even though by the time he was writing the Addams family cartoons, he definitely, or comic strips, correct me, but yeah, when he was writing the Addams Family comic strips, even though by then people were already kind of associating Victorians as being creepy, he went on in an interview and said that Victorians were just better for haunts, and it was kind of like, the final nail in the casket, if you will. And ever since then, they were known as something creepy and dark, so that was part of my inspiration. It was like, just quoting Charles Addams here, and he isn't right. He isn't wrong. Victorians are kind of better for haunts. This build here, I had a lot of, I don't want to say trouble with, but I definitely went back and changed a lot. Right now I'm putting together the roof here, and this entire roof I'm going to take down and rebuild and restructure a little bit later into the build. And that just partially had to go with, I went into this build with not a super clear idea of what I wanted. I was kind of looking at a few reference images going, okay, I like this aspect of this house, this aspect of that one. But overall, I wasn't really thinking too much about how I would translate that into The Sims. And, I got into the build and I kind of realized I had elements of the house that just weren't making sense. So I went ahead and I was kind of, changed things. And that's another thing. I definitely, if I have any tips for anyone who likes building in The Sims, or who does speed builds, or just builds homes in general in The Sims, don't be afraid to go back and change something if you're realizing it's worked. I know a lot of people who play The Sims, I feel like they often build something, go, oh well, if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. I'm like, yeah, don't be afraid to knock things down or change things, and also don't get too attached to things. That's definitely something I went through this build going. I had that, sorry, I can't speak today. That was my mindset going into this build, was, nothing about this build is inherently precious. I can change it, knock things down as I need. And I think that's just a good, healthy mindset to have, specifically in art making in general. Not that, Sims building is art making, but, as an artist, that's something I've always noticed is very helpful. As well as here in The Sims 4, when you're building, I think it's also good just to remind yourself, it's just, it's just a build. If it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. You can always knock it down, build another, yeah, for this idea, I just wanted to build a big Victorian mansion. It has so many rooms, and that's because, you know, for this challenge I had 8 Sims, or not challenge, for this Let's Play, I have 8 Sims, so my idea was, well, I need at least 8 bedrooms, as well as I wanted, you know, space for skill building, a living room area, just many different rooms in general, because that's another thing in a lot of Victorian homes. There's just lots and lots of empty rooms. Or not empty rooms, but just like lots of rooms that don't really feel like they have a purpose. Like you'll have lots of different sitting rooms, observatories, drawing rooms. You know, that's another thing. Another thing I talk a lot about, specifically Victorians and the different rooms that they had, but I think that's a good idea for anyone building in any style, just trying to get an idea of what were the creators or the architects of the time trying to portray or add to that house. Because, you know, I think a lot of times we kind of forget, or we won't do a lot of research when going into building homes here in The Sims. I'm very guilty of it, specifically like whenever I do like mid-century modern homes, or any kind of, you know, style that I'm only vaguely familiar with. And I think that's important to, you know, just do some light research, whether that just be looking at images online, maybe watching a few videos. In some ways I'm very lucky with, like, you know, Victorians, you know, we don't really build in the Victorian style anymore. So, you know, there's a lot more, you know, research or historical documentation around it. So here's where I'm beginning to change a little bit of the roof, as well as other parts of the house, you know, pulling things in, pulling things out, changing some of the walls and where the walls go. You know, once again, I just think this is important for the process of building. You know, you just gotta realize, okay, I have a vision and I know what I want, and, you know, you gotta just make it work, or you don't. Here I struggle a little because, you know, I want the house to have a certain shape, but I wanting to make something to work out that I kind of give up on, as you'll see later, and that's these towers. These towers coming up, I definitely decided to shrink some of them rather than have them go all the way up to the 3rd floor. And that's another thing I think I kind of forgot, is that, like, the 3rd floor is supposed to be like the attic roof space. So, like, from the outside, it might not look like it's a room or that there's space up there, even though there are. And my idea is like, oh, the towers have to go up all the way. I'm like, but they really wouldn't in most Victorian homes, because, like, the roof of the towers would probably go up to that area, if that makes sense. Anyways, what I'm trying to get at is I had a vision, and I realized, you know, to get my vision, I had to change some things around. So, you know, that's never something to be afraid of when building. If I have any tips for anyone building, it's just don't be afraid. You know, just knock some walls down, change it up if you have a vision, and also don't stick to your vision too much. Like, you'll never fully be able to make your vision happen, if that makes sense, because there are still limitations within The Sims. You can definitely get very close to it, but also you gotta realize you have to make compromise. As you'll see here, I'm trying to get a slanted kind of bloated roof looking on, which was very popular for the Victorian period. I ended up kind of giving up on it. Which, you know, once again, nothing wrong with that. Sometimes you just gotta realize, you know, it isn't gonna work out. And, you know, here I'm beginning to decide, okay, the towers don't need to go up to the final floor, because, you know, from the outside, the final floor just looks like, well, a roof, really. And even though I'm using it as living space, you know, and many Victorians probably would have, but, you know, most modern people are probably just gonna go, it's a roof. So, but yeah, as you see here, I'm trying to get that kind of like more curved roof that we see in a lot of Victorian styles. It comes from the French Imperial style. I end up just saying, whatever. Having a slanted roof. I don't need it to be at a curve or any fancy bloating, you know, just, I kind of go, it's whatever. And that's one of those things, because it's one of those things for me. I felt like it didn't feel that important to the overall shape of the house, if that makes sense. And that's one thing I always encourage people to think of that when building in The Sims 4 is, what is the shape of the house, the silhouette, if you will. And I kind of get that language from character design. When you're doing character design, people often ask, what does the silhouette of the character look like? In just black and white or whatever, or in grayscale, no detail, completely, or just if you take the character and completely make them into a silhouette, just a black shape, is it an interesting silhouette? And that's kind of what I think about with building in The Sims 4 is, even though these homes aren't necessarily characters or Sims, or, I just think about, like, what's their silhouette? What do they look like? Do they feel like they are portraying a certain kind of style or feeling? Like, who do you think lives here? What do you think they're like? And that was kind of my, my idea when doing any kind of building, but specifically in this build, I picked Victorian style because, for one, I like building it, but also it's notoriously known for being like creepy and dark and being, just kind of seen as oh my god, sorry, I can't speak today. It's notoriously seen as being the subversion of the American family ideal now because of our connotations with it. And the Gloom family that I'm playing with, they're a little bit of they're a subversion of the American ideal family. They are also a little bit, inspired by the Addams family, which originally are a subversion of that ideal American dream family. And the Victorian has been known for that, now. And it partially has to do with the history of the Victorian. The majority of people who owned Victorians in the Victorian period, they, had made money in some sketchy, less than, ideal ways, were kind of known for being dark and weird. Of course, during the Victorian period, everyone still loved the Victorian style. It wasn't a little bit till later that I got known for being dark. But, even at the time, when we look back, we're like, the majority of people who could afford to live in these big, lavish Victorian mansions during the 18th century, they just, or the 19th century, my bad. During the 19th century, people who could afford to live there weren't really the most ethical when it came to, like, business. I talk a little bit about this on my other channel, my art history channel. I have a video on the Victorian home, and in it I talk a little bit about, the Victorian was, of its time, kind of like, that image of, it was for the nouveau riche, the new rich, these people who were not coming in from old money, but were getting their money from new markets. And a good part of that was from the factory industry, and that industry was kind of built on exploiting other people, and not really caring about their health or their or their care. So, the Victorian home kind of has that history of, the people who lived there weren't generally the most ethical. The people who lived there and could afford to live there weren't really, the best people on the block. And I think we see this a lot with upper class in their homes and what they stand for. There really aren't, you very rarely find someone who, especially in any rich class, who, whether it be old money, meaning they came into it through family or whatever, the beginning of that money, of that riches, that family wealth, generally does not begin with ethical, it doesn't come from an ethical beginning. However, I'm not here to critique the rich or their wealth. I just want to say that's kind of like, as people got out of the Victorian period and we moved on to the 20th century, you get modernism, and after World War I, specifically the change in how people think, not just about the Victorian period, but also just like wealth in general. They kind of, rejected a little. They look at the Victorian period, as disgustingly opulent, over the top, being really just the rich being, reminding everyone that they're rich and everyone else is poor, And of course, this is the same way we feel about McMansions now. Now everyone's like, ooh, McMansions are ugly. They're a symbol of like disgusting wealth. Victorians, however, also now have this added connotation of being creepy and haunted, so. But yeah, I'm definitely sure you guys did not come here for me to rant about Victorians and their history again. So I also just want to switch to talk a little bit about the game Gloom. Also, as I've said in the Let's Play and a little bit in this video, how the game works is I have the second edition, and there's a bunch of expansion packs for it that you can buy, but it's a card game, and it comes with, the second edition at least, comes with 4 families, and they're all kind of based off of different stereotypes of things that are creepy. There's like a circus family, a family that's kind of like an Addams Family-esque family, one that's kind of like one that's inspired by Frankenstein. So you got these kind of creepy subversions of like this typical American family, and in it you pick one family and you get these cards, and these cards are either cards that have like terrible events on it, like was stung by 100 bees, was chased by poodles, or we'll have happy cards like was fabulously married or whatever. So the unhappy cards you want to play on your own family, because the goal is to make your family as unhappy as possible and then kill them off. And then you play the happy cards on your opponent, on their family, because you want their characters to be happy. And how it works is at the end of the game ends when one family or one player has killed off their entire family, and then everyone adds up their points. Whoever has the most negative points, meaning whoever has the most unhappy family, is the winner. Of course, like I said, the reason I really like this game is I like the storytelling aspect. If you're a creative person, if you like telling stories, you'll have fun with this kind of game. I'm not really too interested in like the violence aspect. I definitely think you can, make a funny story out of it. And like a lot of the cards are fairly harmless. Like there's nothing like too like graphic, but like they're a little kind of funny in some ways. Like there's one card that's like was attacked by the essentially you were attacked by trees, and that's like a funny one. Like how do you come up with a story about trees attacking you? So like I said, it's definitely a game if you like storytelling. It's definitely a game if you like any kind of creativity. So I don't know, and I like playing it because like I said, I just think it's super fun. And and I just kind of decided, there's so many people here on YouTube and we're all making content, and I decided, okay, what's one that people haven't done? Not that I'm like trying to stand out or be revolutionary. It's just like, I want to do something that feels different, that feels like it's me, feels like something I would do. And that's when it occurred to me. I'm like, oh my god, I love Gloom. And I haven't really seen anyone on YouTube bring up Gloom or mention anything about Gloom, really, especially in the Sims community. And, in some ways it makes sense. Like, it's a little hard in this gameplay style to make it, I think, super creative or make it super fun, I guess, for people watching. But I don't know. I'm here to have fun. and I hope you guys have fun along the way. But you know, like, as I tell people a lot of the time, you know, I'm not really here to try to become a big famous YouTuber. I'm really just here because I enjoy The Sims and I want to share my enjoyment with it with some other people. And if one other person enjoys it, then, you know, okay, then I feel like I was successful in my goal to just want to have a fun time. So I don't know, I just want to like to know, or I just want to know who else here, you know, likes playing Gloom. Have you also thought about, you know, incorporating that into your gameplay, as well as what are some other games that you personally play that you would like to somehow incorporate in The Sims? One thing, that's something I think a lot about, because, you know, I want to have fun, creative gameplay. I don't want to just I don't know, I think for me personally, playing in The Sims and wanting to have fun in The Sims, I'm constantly, I just want to have a fun time. I want to do things that are fun for me, but also at the same time are fun for maybe any potential viewers. So, you know, just let me know, because this is one thing I think a lot about. Other games, other movies. I do have a Let's Play I'm in the workings with, that I think I'm gonna wait for the Realm of Magic pack to come out with to start that gameplay. I could use the supernatural mods we have now, but I think that would also be a fun way to kind of show off that new game pack when we get it, as well as, you know, it's fun to play with. Like, I love mods, don't get me wrong, but whenever I use a mod, I'm also kind of like, why can't this just, like, be in the game? And I don't know if anyone else feels that way. But I do have, like, a really fun one that I'm coming up with. And part of it is I just want to bring back, for example, Selma and the Witches. And I think I'm going to try to incorporate my Sims from Strangerville, because, you know, I miss them so much. As well as I've been thinking of bringing my Strangerville Sims in to do the Jungle Adventure, because I haven't played with Jungle Adventure yet, and I think that could be fun. But then also, I don't really know, Jungle Adventure is one of those weird ones where I'm like, it sounds fun, but also it's a little it's a little, like, I don't know how to word this right, because I don't want to make anyone upset, but essentially, to me, it feels just super, I don't want to say imperialistic or colonistic, because you're not going there to colonize or anything, but, you know, part of the gameplay is, like, you know, you're going to this new exotic jungle world that is inspired by the ancient Maya and Aztec and other Mesoamerican cultures, which, if you don't know, I know I talk about Victorian period a lot, and how much I love the Victorian period. In college, I did study Mesoamerican, specifically the ancient Maya. So, you know, so I think a part of me is just, like, a little more critical of that, but then also, I do love to see that brought into the game, because, like, for one, like, no one ever mentions, like, the ancient Maya or Aztecs, really. You know, and I'm not, like, super mad, like, I know, I'm not, like, mad that there's, like, skeleton guards, or, like, that there's some kind of mystical element to it, because, I mean, like, The Sims 4, part of the Sims franchises, there's always been, like, a mystical aspect, and I do believe that, like, the Sims team, they're not trying to be like, oh, this is an accurate representation of the people we're inspiring this culture off of, because, you know, in some way, it isn't the ancient Aztecs and the ancient Maya. It's just kind of inspired by them. And like I said, I'm not, like, super mad about that aspect of it. I'm kind of like, okay, that's fine. For me, it's more of the jungle exploration part, in that I haven't played it yet, so I'm not sure if it really addresses it. But for example, especially in the past few years, there's been a lot of conversation around, like, is it appropriate for for institutions of art and history that do not belong in these countries? Is it right for them to showcase and own artifacts and art from other cultures? For example, is it okay for Northern American art museums to contain or own ancient Maya art and artifacts? That's, and I don't think there is really a black or white answer. But it's definitely a conversation that's been happening a lot, and a good example of it is the Fine Art Museum, the MFA in Boston, has the largest collection of Maya vases. So, in Boston's in the northeast corner, and the Maya are from, central or from lower Mexico into Guatemala and down through Mesoamerica. So that's nowhere near that region of the world, and it's just something to think about. I'm not saying there is a right or wrong answer. I'm just saying it's something that I don't think is thought about enough, and I'm not sure if that gameplay even really addresses that. I don't think it does, and in some ways it's not the Sims team. I don't think it's their responsibility to, because they're just a simulation game, and in the world that is something that happens. People go into a region of the world that they are not from, and they pick artifacts up. So I'm not saying there is a right or wrong answer, and I'm not saying that the Sims team is evil for not addressing. I don't know. It's just something I'm thinking about, and I've been thinking about doing a Jungle Adventure Let's Play, but that's the main reason. I'm kind of I don't know. So anyways, we talked a lot in this video, from Victorians to the Gloom game to some building tips, to Jungle Adventure. Let me know what you guys think I should do next, as well as let me know, because I've been thinking about doing a video that's just tips on building. Anyways, thank you so much for watching my video. I'll see you next time, and make sure to check out my Gloom Let's Play.